And Ethan had no idea that the two people he trusted most were about to destroy him. Ethan and Claire had been married for 9 years. They weren't perfect, no couple was, but they had built a life together. Ethan worked long hours, but he always made time for Claire. They had routines, inside jokes, and a connection that he never questioned. And Daniel? Daniel had been Ethan's best friend since they were kids. They grew up together, went to college together, and even stood next to each other at Ethan's wedding. Daniel was like a brother. He had even helped Ethan get through tough times, like when Ethan lost his mother to cancer. Ethan would have trusted Daniel with his life. And that was his biggest mistake. It started with little things. Claire was distant lately, not in a dramatic way. No screaming, no fights, but in small, almost invisible ways. She wasn't as affectionate. She checked her phone more often. She started going out alone more than usual. And then there was Daniel. Daniel, who had always been the most dependable person in Ethan's life, was suddenly acting strange, canceling plans, avoiding eye contact, not being himself. Ethan noticed, but he didn't say anything, because the idea that his wife and best friend could be hiding something, that was unthinkable. One night, Ethan was working late in his home office when Claire's phone buzzed. She had left it on the kitchen counter. Ethan wasn't the type to check her messages, but something made him look. A single notification lit up the screen. A text message from Daniel. Daniel, I miss you. When can we see each other again? Ethan felt his chest tighten. His hands went cold. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. He stared at the message for a long time, his entire world shifting under him. And in that moment, Ethan knew something was very, very wrong. Ethan didn't react right away. He needed to be sure. So, he pretended everything was normal. That night, when Claire walked into the bedroom, Ethan looked at her differently. For the first time, he wondered, who was this woman? Hey, she said, smiling. You okay? Ethan forced himself to nod. Yeah, just a long day. Claire leaned over and kissed him. And Ethan wondered, how many times had she kissed him with Daniel's name in her mind? He wanted to ask, wanted to demand the truth, but not yet, because if they were lying to him, he needed more than just a single text message. He needed proof. The next day, Ethan took a half day from work. He didn't tell Claire. He didn't tell Daniel. Instead, he followed his wife. Claire had told him she was meeting a friend for coffee, but Ethan had checked her messages before she left. And her real plans? She was meeting Daniel at a small, out-of-the-way hotel just outside of town. Ethan followed her car from a distance, his hands gripping the wheel so tightly they ached. His stomach churned. His head screamed at him to turn back, that there was still a chance he was wrong. But then, Claire's car pulled into the hotel parking lot, and Ethan's world came crashing down. Ethan watched as Claire got out of her car. She looked nervous, excited, like she was meeting a lover. And when Daniel stepped out of his own car, Ethan felt like he was going to be sick. Daniel looked around quickly before walking toward Claire. Claire reached for him, and then she kissed him, right there, in broad daylight. Ethan froze. Time slowed. His heart stopped, because it wasn't just a kiss. It was familiar, intimate, the kind of kiss that meant this wasn't new. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This had been happening for a long time. Ethan's breath shook. His best friend, his wife, betraying him, right in front of him. Ethan didn't confront them. Not yet. He watched, waited, because if they thought they could play him for a fool, they had no idea who they were dealing with. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Ethan wasn't just going to walk away. He was going to make them suffer. And by the time he was done, their lives would never be the same again. Ethan sat in his car outside the hotel, watching them. His wife, his best friend, kissing like they had done this 1,000 times before. His fingers dug into the steering wheel. White-hot rage pulsed through him, but he didn't move, didn't storm in, didn't confront them, because anger alone wasn't enough. If Ethan wanted to destroy them, he had to be smart. And when he was done, neither of them would have anything left. The next day, Ethan started watching. Claire had no idea he had seen her with Daniel. She still kissed him goodbye in the mornings, still pretended everything was normal. But now, Ethan was paying attention. The way she hid her phone, The way she smiled at her screen when she thought he wasn't looking. The way she started taking more showers, using perfume more often. She was hiding something, and Ethan was going to rip that secret out of her hands. Ethan wasn't stupid. He knew he needed proof. So, he started tracking everything. He bought a small recording device and hid it in her car. He installed software on her laptop to log every message. He placed a hidden camera in their bedroom. And it didn't take long before he had everything he needed. 3 days later, Ethan sat alone in his office, staring at Claire's messages. They weren't even careful. Daniel, I miss you already. Claire, I was thinking about you all night. I wish I could have stayed longer. Daniel, soon. He won't suspect anything. Claire, I can't wait. Ethan felt his blood boil, not just because they had betrayed him, but because they thought he was an idiot. They thought he wouldn't figure it out. They thought they could keep this going right under his nose. They were so wrong. Ethan didn't just want to expose them. He wanted to make them feel the paranoia, the fear. So, he started messing with their minds. Claire would wake up to random, anonymous texts. Unknown. Does Ethan know? Unknown. Lies always come out eventually. She deleted them, her hands shaking. Daniel received strange calls at work. Calls that hung up as soon as he answered. Ethan watched them both grow uneasy. But they still didn't stop. They thought it was just coincidence. They had no idea the real storm was coming. One night, Ethan casually mentioned he had to go on a business trip. He watched as Claire's face twitched, just for a second. The perfect opportunity had just been handed to her. And Ethan knew exactly what she was going to do. The night of his supposed trip, Ethan parked a few houses away and waited. At exactly 9:45 p.m., Daniel's car pulled up. Not even an hour. That's all it took for his wife to invite his best friend into their bed. Ethan watched from his phone, the hidden camera in their bedroom catching everything. Daniel's hands on Claire. Claire laughing. Them falling into bed together. Right where Ethan should have been. Like the video to support Ethan. His stomach twisted. It was worse than he imagined. It was intimacy. A relationship. A bond. They had been doing this for a long time, and they thought they were safe. They thought Ethan was clueless. That was their mistake. Because now, it was Ethan's turn to play. Ethan didn't confront them. Not yet. He let Daniel leave in the morning. Let Claire kiss him like nothing had happened. Let her pretend. Because the moment he made his move, everything she knew would come crashing down. And when Ethan was done, she would wish she had never betrayed him. Ethan woke up before Claire. She lay beside him, sleeping peacefully, like she hadn't spent the night before moaning Daniel's name, like she hadn't destroyed their marriage. Ethan stared at her, feeling nothing. No love, no pain, no regret, just cold, calculating rage. She had no idea that he knew, and that was going to make this so much worse for her. Ethan wanted Claire to feel the walls closing in, to question everything. So, he started small. That afternoon, while she was in the shower, he took her phone and deleted random texts between her and Daniel. When she checked later, her brow furrowed. She knew they had texted, but the messages were gone. Claire bit her lip, looking uneasy. Ethan pretended not to notice. Then, he started moving things around the house. Her perfume bottle, placed in a different spot. Her earrings, one was missing. Her car keys, hidden, only to mysteriously reappear. Claire's frustration grew every day. I swear I left them here, she muttered under her breath. Ethan would glance up, pretending to be concerned. Maybe you're just tired, he suggested. Claire nodded, exhaling sharply. Yeah, maybe. But doubt was already creeping in, and it was about to get much worse. Ethan didn't forget about Daniel. Oh no. His best friend was about to suffer too. Step 1. Mess with his job. Ethan created a fake email account and sent anonymous complaints to Daniel's company. Daniel Wallace has been engaging in unethical relationships. Ask him about his private meetings during work hours. Are his billable hours really accurate? The HR department started looking into him. Whispers spread. Daniel's boss called him in for a meeting. Daniel, of course, had no idea where it was coming from. And that was the beauty of it. Step 2. Make him paranoid. One night, Daniel got a text from an unknown number. Unknown. Does Ethan know? Daniel stiffened. He immediately texted Claire. Daniel, did you tell anyone? Claire, of course not. Why? Daniel, someone texted me. They know. Claire froze. The walls around them were slowly crumbling, and they still had no idea it was Ethan pulling the strings. Claire wasn't sleeping well. She woke up in the middle of the night, checking her phone, checking the locks on the doors. One night, Ethan pretended to be asleep as she paced the bedroom, her breathing heavy. She was cracking. Good. Then, Ethan took it up a level. He went into her car one morning before she woke up and left a hotel keycard in the cup holder. It wasn't the one from the night she was with Daniel. It was a random one. But when Claire saw it, she went pale. Claire, Ethan, she called out, trying to keep her voice normal. Ethan, yeah? Claire, did you go anywhere yesterday? Ethan looked up, confused. What? No. Why? Claire quickly shoved the key into her purse. She was scared. Not just that Ethan might know, but that maybe Daniel was being careless. Ethan watched her hands shake. Perfect. A few days later, Claire started acting differently. She started being affectionate again, kissing Ethan in the mornings, asking him about his day, bringing up vacation plans. She was overcompensating, trying to convince herself that she could make things normal again. One night, she sat next to Ethan on the couch, laying her head on his shoulder. I love you, she whispered. Ethan almost laughed. He ran his fingers through her hair gently. Then, he whispered back, I love you too. Because the best lies sound like the truth. Daniel had a girlfriend. Her name was Melissa. She was sweet, loyal. She thought Daniel was the perfect man. Ethan decided it was time for her to know the truth. He sent Melissa an email. Anonymous. Check his messages. Look at his location history. He's not who you think he is. At first, she ignored it. But the seed of doubt was planted. That night, when Daniel was in the shower, Melissa checked his phone, and she found everything. Every text, every meeting with Claire, every disgusting, I love you, they had exchanged. Daniel came out of the shower to find his bags packed. Melissa slapped him across the face. You're a disgusting liar, she spat. And just like that, Daniel lost the only real person who ever loved him. One night, Claire was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her wine glass, completely silent. Ethan sat across from her, pretending to be oblivious. Finally, she spoke. Ethan, do you ever feel like something is off? Ethan raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Claire bit her lip. I don't know. I feel like something bad is coming. Ethan tilted his head. Why would you feel that way? Claire didn't answer. Because deep down, she knew. Maybe she didn't know how. Maybe she didn't know when. But she knew the end was coming. And when it did, it would be violent. Part 4. The night they'll never forget. Ethan knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't want this to happen in public. Not yet. First, he needed to see their faces. Needed to hear their excuses. Needed to watch them break down when they realized that their dirty little secret was no longer a secret. So, he set the trap. He texted Claire. Ethan, hey, let's have a quiet dinner tonight. Just us. She responded immediately. Claire, that sounds perfect. I miss you. Liar. Then, he texted Daniel. Ethan, need to talk. Come over tonight. Important. Daniel hesitated before replying. Daniel, everything okay? Ethan, just come. Game on. That night, Claire sat across from Ethan at the dinner table. She had dressed up, a silk dress, makeup perfect, hair styled. She was trying so hard to be the perfect wife, trying to make up for her guilt without actually confessing. Ethan played along. He smiled. He poured the wine. He pretended. Claire laughed at his jokes, reached for his hand. Ethan let her, because he knew what was coming next. At exactly 8:45 p.m., there was a knock at the door. Ethan stood, his heartbeat steady. Claire looked up. Who is that? Ethan smirked. You'll see. Then, he walked to the door and let Daniel in. As soon as Daniel stepped inside, he saw Claire sitting at the table. Their eyes met, and that's when they both knew. Their faces went pale. Claire's breath hitched. Daniel stiffened. Ethan shut the door behind him, locked it. Then, slowly, he walked back to the table and sat down. For a moment, There was only silence. Then, Ethan exhaled. Well, he leaned back, eyes calm, unreadable. This is awkward, isn't it? Claire swallowed. Ethan, what's going on? Daniel forced a chuckle. Yeah, man. What's this about? Ethan looked between them. Then, he dropped the act. He pulled out his phone, pressed play, and the room filled with their voices. Daniel, I miss you already. Claire, I was thinking about you all night. Daniel, soon. He won't suspect anything. Claire, I can't wait. Their own words. Recorded. Undeniable. And the final nail in their coffin. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. Daniel's face drained of color. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, Claire, Ethan, I can explain. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Can you? She was shaking. It's not what it sounds like. Ethan laughed. Oh, Claire. He leaned forward. It's exactly what it sounds like. She choked on a sob. Daniel? He finally found his voice. Ethan, man, listen. Ethan cut him off. Shut the F** up, Daniel. Daniel's mouth snapped shut. Ethan stood up slowly, towering over them. He turned to Claire. You sat at this table and kissed me like you weren't F** on my best friend. Claire flinched like he had hit her. Ethan, please. Ethan turned to Daniel. And you? His voice was deadly calm. You were my brother. And you did this? Daniel couldn't even look at him. Daniel swallowed hard. I didn't mean for it to happen. Ethan smiled. Cold. Cruel. Oh? You didn't mean to F** my wife? Daniel's face burned with shame. It was a mistake. Ethan leaned in close. No, Daniel. A mistake is a one-time thing. He pointed at Claire. This was a choice. Claire collapsed to her knees. Tears streamed down her face. Ethan, she whispered. I love you. Ethan tilted his head. Really? You love me? She nodded desperately. Yes. I swear Ethan's voice turned to ice. Then why did you let him touch you? Claire sobbed harder. But Ethan? He felt nothing. Ethan stepped back, looking at both of them. Let's get one thing straight, he said. He turned to Daniel. We're done. You're dead to me. Daniel nodded slowly. He didn't even try to argue. Ethan turned to Claire. You? He exhaled. You have no idea what's coming next. Claire's eyes widened. Ethan smirked. You thought this was the confrontation? He shook his head. Oh, no, sweetheart. His expression darkened. This was just the warm-up. Then, without another word, he walked out, leaving them both shaking in fear. Because they knew. Ethan wasn't finished with them yet. Claire woke up with a pounding headache. Her body felt heavy. Her eyes were swollen from crying all night. She had barely slept. But the worst part? Ethan was gone. Not just from the house, but from her life. She checked her phone. No messages. No missed calls. She called him. Straight to voicemail. Her hands trembled. Because deep down, she knew. This wasn't over. Ethan knew Claire was desperate to talk to him. That's why he refused to give her the satisfaction. She called? Ignored. She texted? Left on read. She begged their mutual friends for information? No one said a word. Claire was being erased. She wasn't just losing her husband. She was losing her status, her security, her control, and it was driving her insane. A few days later, Claire tried to buy groceries. Her card declined. Her face burned as the cashier gave her a sympathetic look. She tried again. Declined. Her stomach twisted. No. 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 She pulled out her phone and opened her banking app. And what she saw made her go numb. Her account balance, $0. Ethan had drained everything. Claire's breathing became shallow. She rushed out of the store and called her bank. Claire, there must be a mistake. My accounts are empty. The representative sighed. Ma'am, your husband closed the joint accounts yesterday. Claire felt the world tilt. What about my personal savings? She stammered. A pause. Then, those accounts were under his name as well. He had full access. Claire dropped the phone. She had nothing. Claire had never needed to ask for help before. But now, she had no money, no job, and no control. She swallowed her pride and called her older sister, Lauren. Claire, Lauren, I need help. A long silence. Then, Lauren, I heard what you did. Claire's stomach dropped. Claire, Lauren, you destroyed your own life. Don't expect me to fix it. Click. Claire stared at the phone, shaking. She was truly alone. Claire was desperate. So, she did the only thing she could. She called Daniel. Claire, I need to see you. Daniel hesitated. Claire, I don't think that's a good idea. Claire felt panic rise. Claire, wait, what? You're not seriously turning your back on me now? A deep sigh. Then, Daniel, Ethan's ruining my life, Claire. My job is investigating me. Melissa left me. Everything's falling apart. Claire's eyes widened. Claire, so you're blaming me? Daniel, I'm saying this was a mistake. You and me. Claire felt her blood turn cold. Claire, Daniel, don't do this. Daniel didn't respond. Then, click. Claire's hands shook with rage. First Ethan, now Daniel. She had thrown away everything for that bastard. And now? He was leaving her to drown. Just when Claire thought things couldn't get worse, Ethan made his next move. One morning, she walked into her favorite coffee shop, trying to pretend her life wasn't falling apart. But the moment she stepped inside, people stared, whispered. A group of women at a corner table snickered. Claire's skin burned. Then, she heard the sound. A notification. Then another. And another. People were pulling out their phones, looking at her. She grabbed her own phone and opened her messages. And what she saw made her stomach drop. Ethan had sent the cheating proof to everyone. Her family, her friends, her coworkers, even her gym group chat. Claire's own words and photos, the proof of her affair, were now public knowledge. She dropped her coffee, ran out of the shop, because for the first time, Claire truly understood. Her life was over. That night, Claire sat in her dark, empty house. No money, no husband, no best friend, no one left to call. So, she did the only thing left. She went to Ethan's new apartment, pounded on the door, and when he finally answered, Claire collapsed to her knees. Please, she sobbed. Please, Ethan, don't do this. I'm sorry. I was stupid. I ruined everything. Ethan stared down at her, completely emotionless. He didn't reach for her, didn't comfort her, because Claire wasn't a wife anymore. She was just a pathetic, broken woman who had lost everything, and it was her fault. She reached for his hand. I love you, she whispered. Ethan tilted his head. You love me? Claire nodded frantically. Yes, I swear. Ethan's face darkened. Then why did you destroy me? Claire broke. Her sobs filled the hallway. But Ethan? He felt nothing. Ethan slowly crouched down, met Claire's tear-filled eyes. And then, he whispered the last words she'd ever hear from him. You deserve this. Then, he shut the door in her face. And this time, it stayed shut. Forever. Daniel had been careful. After Claire was publicly exposed, he stayed quiet. He cut ties with her, avoided attention, pretended nothing had happened. He thought if he kept his head down, he could rebuild. His boss had called him in for a meeting after the anonymous complaints. But Daniel was charming. He talked his way out of it, convinced them the rumors were personal attacks. For a moment, he thought, maybe I'll survive this. He had no idea what Ethan was planning. Ethan knew Daniel's company wouldn't fire him without proof. So, he created a trail. He hacked into Daniel's work emails, not to steal information, but to leak things that looked suspicious. He started sending anonymous emails to Daniel's boss. Anonymous. Check Daniel Wallace's financial records. Ask him about the unapproved client expenses. Anonymous. How much do you really know about his personal affairs? Daniel's company started digging deeper. And what they found, even Ethan hadn't expected. Ethan had planned to frame Daniel, but Daniel was already dirty. During the investigation, his company found real financial discrepancies. Small at first, then larger. Daniel had been padding client invoices, overstating billable hours, taking personal kickbacks. He had already been stealing from the company, and Ethan had just given them the push to find it. One morning, Daniel walked into work feeling confident. But the moment he stepped into the office, he felt it. People staring, whispering. HR called him in, and his boss was waiting. Daniel, his boss said, sliding a folder across the desk. Care to explain this? Inside, pages of financial irregularities. Daniel froze. His throat closed. This isn't what it looks like, he stammered. His boss raised an eyebrow. Really? Because it looks like you've been stealing from us. Daniel panicked. I can fix this. His boss's expression turned cold. Oh, you'll fix it. He tossed termination papers onto the desk. You're fired. Daniel begged for another chance. His boss laughed in his face. Daniel tried applying for other jobs. But in his industry, reputation is everything. Ethan made sure that every company in their network knew about Daniel's firing and financial misconduct. No one would hire him. Not now. Not ever. His career? Gone. Daniel sat alone in a dive bar, drinking cheap whiskey. His life was in ruins. No job, no girlfriend, no friends, no future. Then, he heard a chair scrape beside him. He looked up. Ethan, sitting across from him, smirking. Daniel's chest tightened. You, he hissed. You did this to me. Ethan sipped his drink calmly. No, Daniel, he said. You did this to yourself. Daniel's hands shook. I lost everything. Ethan leaned forward. Good. Daniel exhaled sharply. You win. Is that what you want to hear? Ethan smiled. No, Daniel. His voice dropped to a whisper. What I want to hear is you begging. Daniel clenched his jaw. F********* you. Ethan chuckled. That's what Claire said to you, right? Before she lost everything? Daniel's face twisted in pain. Because Ethan was right. Claire had tried calling him, begging to talk. He had ignored her. Because they were both sinking. And Daniel knew. No one was coming to save him. Ethan stood up, tossing some bills on the table. As he walked away, he turned back one last time. Enjoy the bottom, Daniel. Then, he left. And this time, Daniel knew it was over. Ethan walked away stronger. He rebuilt his life. He never looked back. Claire ended up alone. Broke. Hated. A shell of who she once was. Daniel lost everything. His job, his reputation, his future. He would never recover. They thought they could betray Ethan. They thought they could move on. But in the end, they ruined themselves. And Ethan? He was finally free. Thank you for listening to the story to the end. Please like, share your thoughts and subscribe to the channel.